You won't believe what just unfolded on national television. A confrontation that rocked the political establishment and brought the studio to a complete standstill. On a live broadcast from the American Pulse, Caroline Leavitt, the youngest, and perhaps one of the boldest political spokespeople in U.S. history, stood firm on stage and directly challenged former President Barack Obama. What followed was a blistering exchange packed with accusations, rebuttals and revelations that could reshape public opinion for years to come. Caroline Leavitt, at just 27 years old, didn't arrive on that stage seeking politeness or moderation. She carried with her a determination to expose what she believed were carefully hidden truths buried beneath political narratives. Her appearance was composed, professional, a navy suit, her posture upright, eyes calm yet piercing. She wasn't there to make headlines. She was there to demand accountability. The stage was set for a debate that had been promoted for weeks. Crowds tuned in from all across the country. Phones buzzed with anticipation, and social media platforms trended with hashtags even before the show started. Inside the studio, lights burned brightly overhead while the air buzzed with quiet tension. The host stepped forward, his voice echoing through the hall as he opened the evening. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a moment of reckoning. Tonight we examine power, press, and the promise of democracy." Caroline was invited to speak first, and she didn't waste a second. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady but edged with intensity. "I'm here to discuss what many won't. How former President Obama coordinated with major media networks during both the 2012 and 2016 election cycles to discredit his political opponents. This wasn't coincidental coverage. It was strategic manipulation." Gasps could be heard in the studio as she turned to a large screen beside her, which lit up with a timeline of headlines. Dates, media outlets, and specific article titles scrolled across the display, each one targeting Mitt Romney or Donald Trump. She explained with clarity and precision how those stories aligned perfectly with meetings and interactions between White House aides and senior editorial staff. These stories didn't appear by chance, she declared. They were the result of deliberate planning, orchestrated efforts to mold public perception by weaponizing journalism. The host turned to Obama, inviting a response. The former president leaned forward, calm and composed. "I appreciate the opportunity to address these accusations. Let me be absolutely clear. I have always respected the freedom of the press. Media outlets are autonomous. I never directed or influenced any editorial decisions, and any suggestion otherwise is simply unfounded." There was polite applause from one section of the audience, but many remained silent, watching carefully. Caroline wasn't done. "Independent?" she countered. "Then explain these meeting records," she said, lifting a folder containing a list of documented interactions between Obama's team and senior editors from several media houses. Cameras zoomed in as she held the documents high. Right before waves of negative stories broke against opponents, these meetings happened. Coincidence doesn't explain the pattern. Strategy does. The screen behind her changed again, now showing an internal memo that read, "Push narrative about Romney's business record hard this week." Caroline stepped back, letting the audience digest what they had just seen. "This is not journalism," she stated. "This is narrative engineering." The host intervened again, careful to maintain a sense of balance. "Caroline, you raise serious concerns about transparency in the media, especially in a time where Gallup reports only 30% of Americans trust the press. Mr. Obama, how do you respond to this specific accusation that narrative management took precedence over objective journalism under your watch?" Obama took a moment, adjusted his mic, and replied, "The press in this country is vibrant and diverse. Yes, there are editorial meetings, but that does not mean there is top-down orchestration from the Oval Office. The documents she references do not represent my direct involvement. The emails are not proof of manipulation. They are interpretation." Caroline stood unmoved. "Interpretation?" she asked. "Then explain the internal communication where an advisor referenced receiving the White House-approved talking points before going live on air. These weren't opinions. They were distributed scripts designed to guide media narrative. A new file flashed onto the screen, showing excerpts of internal emails with names, timestamps, and highlighted text. One particularly damning line read, "We got the updated narrative sheet from the West Wing. Segment producers are ready." The audience shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't just theory now. It was documentation. The host glanced between the two guests, knowing the debate had shifted from speculation to evidence. "Caroline," he said, "this revelation brings us into murky waters. The use of approved talking points by media raises difficult questions. Mr. Obama, can you clarify whether such documents ever came directly from your office?" Obama took a long breath. "Every administration communicates with the press, that's a fact. What matters is whether those communications were coercive or collaborative. In our case, we offered context and policy perspectives, not directives. Media outlets are responsible for their own editorial decisions." Caroline shook her head. "Context isn't the issue. Control is. You blurred the line between information and influence. That's the point I'm making here." The debate continued, each side pressing forward. Each claim followed by documentation. Each denial met with visual rebuttal. Social media platforms erupted. The hashtag #TruthOrControl trended globally. Millions were watching, not just for entertainment, but to understand what had really happened in those pivotal election years. The tension in the American Pulse studio was almost unbearable as part 2 of the debate unfolded. The lights dimmed slightly as the host, maintaining his poised and professional tone, addressed the nation again. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "as we continue this landmark confrontation, our focus now shifts to the heart of global diplomacy, the Iran nuclear deal." Caroline Leavitt leaned forward, eyes locked on Obama. "The Iran deal," she began, "is often touted as a diplomatic success. But let's pull back the curtain. It wasn't a peace agreement. It was a compromise that endangered America and her allies." The studio fell silent. A chart appeared on the screen behind her. It showed Iran's military spending before and after the deal. A steep rise followed the year of the agreement. Caroline explained that after the deal was signed, Iran's military budget surged by 40%, and that intelligence sources had linked some of that funding to proxies known for anti-US operations. "You didn't halt their aggression," she said. "You fueled it." Obama sat upright, his hands folded. He responded with calm determination. "Caroline, with all due respect, the deal prevented Iran from enriching uranium beyond weapons-grade levels. It brought in international inspectors. It delayed their nuclear program. That's verified by the International Atomic Energy Agency." Caroline replied instantly. "Then explain why Iran violated the deal the moment you left office. Why did they accelerate uranium enrichment in 2019? The screen lit up with a headline, "Iran exceeds uranium limits." Caroline pointed toward it. "This wasn't a deterrent. It was a delay tactic. And while you call it diplomacy, $1.7 billion was transferred in cash." "Quietly," the host cut in, voice steady, grounding the dialogue. "Caroline, you suggest this payment was more than just returning frozen assets. Mr. Obama, how do you respond to accusations that this cash fueled terrorism?" Obama's voice turned cold, yet clear. "That payment resolved long-standing legal claims. It was part of a settlement. To suggest it directly funded terrorism is a distortion." But Caroline pressed again. A new internal email appeared. This time from a Treasury official. "Keep cash transfer quiet to avoid controversy." The studio stirred. She continued, "That's not transparency. That's concealment. You didn't bring peace, you armed instability." Obama's supporters applauded as he rebutted. "The deal was backed by UN Security Council Resolution 2231. Global consensus supported our approach. What Caroline calls deception was international diplomacy." Yet Caroline fired back. Global consensus didn't stop Iran from cheating. And it won't protect our allies from missiles funded by your diplomacy. The studio was tense. The host stepped in. Once more. Let's now move to domestic policy, Obamacare. Caroline shifted smoothly. You promised people could keep their plans. They couldn't. Insurance costs rose. Middle-class families suffered. A chart appeared showing premiums rising post-Obamacare. Obama countered, "We insured 20 million Americans. Pre-existing conditions became protected. Emergency visits declined. These are the facts." Caroline's response came quickly, but millions lost their doctors. Internal memos warned about plan cancellations backlash. You knew. You lied. The memo flashed across the screen, a stark reminder of promises unkept. The host paused, taking in the tension. Caroline, are you saying Obamacare created more harm than benefit? Yes, she answered firmly. It was a legacy project that ignored economic consequences. Obama's jaw tightened. If helping 20 million Americans is harm, then I stand by it. We strengthened the system. But Caroline pointed again to the screen. Another chart. Healthcare. Costs up 25%. That's your legacy. The debate raged. Two voices, two visions, and this was only the beginning.